Welcome back to Dinar Shift, your primary source for dissecting the technical and narrative developments surrounding the Iraqi dinar's long-term financial journey. Today's report contains information that is being intensely discussed across global currency monitoring platforms, sparked by a highly unusual, yet fleeting, data event that occurred early this morning. This incident, often referred to within technical circles as a rate flash, has ignited conversations among speculative communities, prompting many to question if the widely discussed hypothetical revaluation mechanism is entering a more advanced, structural phase. We will delve into the particulars of what was observed, explore the various interpretations offered by those who scrutinize these digital signals, and contextualize why November of 2025 is being symbolically highlighted as a potentially pivotal period in this enduring financial storyline for enthusiasts. Globally, at precisely 9:35 a.m. Baghdad time, a moment now being meticulously analyzed by currency specialists and enthusiasts of digital market behavior, a striking, temporary data anomaly was reportedly registered across several private monitoring terminals. The appearance of this data spike was exceedingly brief, lasting for only a few seconds, but its presence was sufficient to initiate a rapid, widespread dialogue across private trading forums, speculative online communities, and technical analysis groups that dedicate themselves to deciphering signals of behind-the-scenes financial shifts. This type of short-lived spike in data is often interpreted by those who analyze the complex, back-end operations of emerging market currencies as a possible sign of ongoing systems testing, network recalibration, or synchronization processes taking place within the sophisticated, interconnected networks that govern the broadcasting of global exchange rates. What makes this particular data flicker stand out from similar reported events in the past is not just the specific, high-value rate that temporarily appeared notable for $0.66 IQD to $1 USD figure, but the reported consistency and uniform nature with which the spike presented itself across various independent monitoring dashboards utilized by observers in distinct regional locations. The spike was reportedly seen on terminals connected to regional exchanges in financial hubs like Baghdad, Dubai, and London, which, for many observers, suggests a level of coordinated systemic activity. Moments after its appearance, the temporary value immediately reverted back to the established baseline placeholder rate of 1,310 IQD per USD. However, the momentary display was enough to ensure that screenshots were captured, commentary commenced, and waves of interpretation spread rapidly, akin to ripples moving outward after a still surface has been suddenly disturbed. Several technical analysts who follow these patterns have speculated that the origin of this flash might be traced back to a central bank testing environment, possibly emerging during a crucial synchronization step between domestic Iraqi banking nodes and external international clearing systems. Other narratives suggest that the event bears the resemblance of a ghost ping, the type of signal that occasionally surfaces during data migration procedures or during technical rehearsals related to currency rate indexing. While similar, often unverified, flashes have been claimed in previous years, followers of this story argue that no previous incident has demonstrated the perceived consistency, specific timing, and uniform cross-platform appearance of the one observed today. It is this perceived structural orchestration, regardless of its intent, that is fueling the intense conjecture that today's brief data flicker could serve as a precursor to a future, more transparent, and permanent public announcement regarding the currency's official status in the specialized realm of speculative financial narratives, particularly those focused on emerging market monetary systems. A momentary exchange rate flash is frequently treated as an important symbolic breadcrumb, an ambiguous yet intriguing hint that significant back-end operational shifts are currently underway. The last several weeks have already been characterized by widespread, imaginative discussion among forum analysts and enthusiasts concerning the possibility of an impending synchronization period, often loosely linked in the narrative to regional fiscal cycles and broader national modernization programs. While it is crucial to understand that none of these claims originate from official sources or verified data, many narrative-focused financial commentators choose to interpret a flash event like today's as a potential initial step in a hypothetical, predetermined sequence of operational milestones. These sequence of milestones typically follow a dramatic, story-like structure, beginning with an initial systems integration phase, where domestic financial institutions would test their connectivity with international banking networks. This is often imagined to be followed by a rate flash phase, characterized by temporary, non-public indexing tests that may or may not surface on external monitoring dashboards, much like the one observed today. Finally, the story concludes with an activation phase, where the hypothetical final, stable currency values would be published across all public-facing financial terminals and systems. Within today's speculative analysis, enthusiasts emphasize the precise timing of the event occurring during active global trading hours as especially noteworthy, given that test signals often appear after hours when fewer network participants are active, suggesting a more deliberate operational choice in this fictionalized account. Within this narrative framework, one might imagine a financial journalist, perhaps styled as Mira al-Nuri from a fictional version of an Iraqi business journal, commenting that such rate flashes often correlate with back-end testing of newly implemented experimental exchange protocols introduced earlier in the year. These narrative insights are often coupled with generalized, non-committal statements regarding exchange stability from official financial institutions, which some readers interpret as indirect confirmation of a larger unfolding storyline. While this interpretive narrative remains firmly rooted in speculation rather than verifiable evidence, it serves as a clear illustration of how seemingly small, technical events can rapidly spark elaborate, communal interpretations among dedicated groups eager for any sign of significant, forward movement in the long-running currency story. The hypothetical global response to the 9:35 a.m. flash was, at least within the imaginative world of currency-focused online communities, almost instantaneous across various message boards, social media channels, and investor-themed chat groups. Reports circulated of a variety of technical oddities, including brief lag spikes, temporary data freezes, and intermittent slowdowns in feed reception, all coinciding precisely with the 5-minute window of the event. Although these anecdotal claims are unverified and exist purely as part of the narrative's atmosphere of intrigue, they significantly contribute to the overall storyline being constructed by these communities. In this fictional telling, several well-known international banks institutions such as Chase, Wells Fargo, HSBC, and Deutsche Bank were described by observers as experiencing temporary latency on their IQD data streams around the time the event occurred. Enthusiasts within these online communities often point to such claimed synchronicity as a hallmark of sophisticated cross-border testing or indexing behavior, even though public-facing financial institutions rarely, if ever, acknowledge or comment on these minute fluctuations. A fictional analyst from an imagined firm like London's FX Strategies Ltd might be portrayed as telling imaginary reporters that synchronized latency across multiple institutions is often an observable effect when new data schemas are being tested or when cross-border systems undergo trial recalibration. It is essential to reiterate that none of these imaginative claims should be mistaken for factual, verifiable evidence. Instead, this detail emphasizes how quickly and effectively online communities can construct elaborate, meaning and dramatic context from fragments of technical noise or simple network behavior. For those who follow these narratives closely, every perceived technical disturbance or moment of unexpected latency becomes another building block in a larger, evolving speculative storyline. In that enduring narrative, today's specific event is framed not merely as a technical glitch, but rather as the quiet, sustained hum of financial machinery actively preparing for some forthcoming, substantial change. Whether or not such a narrative has any grounding in the highly complex operations of the real financial world is an entirely separate question. However, within the context of fictional market dramatization, this perceived technical activity provides powerful, compelling fuel for a collective anticipation that sustains the entire community's interest and engagement. As speculative circles continue to weave intricate narratives around the brief, morning currency flash, many voices within these imaginative communities naturally pivot toward a larger, central question: could a future period, symbolically represented here as November 2025, serve as a pivotal and defining chapter in their long-running storyline? Within these fictional discussions, several persistent thematic elements are frequently marshaled to lend structure and support to this idea. One major theme involves the concept of national fiscal year cycles, with enthusiasts often suggesting that the mid-November timeframe represents a strategic and operationally suitable window for theoretical currency realignments or major policy adjustments to be implemented. Another widely cited narrative thread places significant emphasis on rising national revenues, particularly those tied to the robust export of natural resources like oil. In the form of the storyline, These revenues are imagined to be strengthening financial reserves to a degree that supports and sustains hypothetical monetary shifts. Additional components of the story revolve around the important theme of debt management, with characters in this narrative describing how the clearing of various lingering obligations contributes significantly to a nation's increasing financial autonomy and sovereignty. Furthermore, technological modernizations, specifically the introduction of new digital banking systems, comprehensive ATM networks, and advanced mobile platforms become intricately woven into the plot as perceived evidence of a growing national readiness for larger-scale financial transformations. When all these thematic elements are skillfully braided together, they create a fictional ecosystem that is conceptually ripe for speculation and forward-looking analysis. Within the context of such a story, the brief, momentary rate flash observed today becomes interpreted not as a random technical error, but as the initial defining spark of a long-awaited transformation that has been years in the making. Enthusiasts readily imagine that these distinct narrative threads could soon converge into a singular, defining moment of potential profit, national economic renewal, or major financial renaissance. Yet, it must always be unequivocally stressed that this is entirely creative interpretation and communal storytelling, rather than any form of genuine financial forecasting or prediction. These powerful ideas flourish primarily in the imaginations of communities who are deeply eager for any sign of progress, and their real value lies not in any predictive accuracy, but in the collective storytelling and shared anticipation that keeps these diverse groups energized, connected, and focused on a common, long-term narrative. Within the rich, imaginative world of global currency enthusiasts, the individual Iraqi dinar holder often occupies the emotional center of this entire narrative. For years, these fictional holders have been portrayed as following every major headline, tracking every whispered rumor, and scrutinizing every policy announcement that seemed to hint at a potential shift lurking just beyond the horizon of immediate events. In this compelling, story-driven context, their long-demonstrated patience is presented as a defining, almost foundational trait, a true badge of honor earned through countless hours spent reading detailed speculation threads, watching complex market charts that rarely registered movement, and comparing detailed notes in online communities that have evolved into virtual families of shared anticipation. When today's dramatic rate flash appeared, even as a fleeting, minor blip on a screen, it carried a symbolic weight that extended far beyond its mere numerical value. In the narrative, it instantly represented a form of validation, not definitive proof of wealth, but palpable evidence that the watchers have not been entirely imagining the slow, steady technological and administrative evolution unfolding across the expansive Iraqi financial landscape. Yet, whether fictionalized or grounded in real events, the narrative also responsibly highlights the need for continuous preparedness and responsibility, ensuring that one's physical currency notes are preserved with care, maintaining connections only with officially verified financial institutions, and grounding one's personal expectations firmly in official, governmental announcements rather than impulsive, unverified chatter. The story consistently suggests that maintaining a sense of calmness becomes an essential strength, especially during moments when major, unexpected events occur without prior warning or official context. In these fictionalized accounts, the quiet, prepared investor, the one who proactively prepares rather than reactively panicking, is consistently portrayed as the figure who ultimately navigates times of profound change with the greatest clarity and most steady hand. Whether or not any real-world event follows this specific storyline is secondary. The narrative's primary emphasis is always placed upon the personal journey, the unwavering discipline, the necessary patience, and the fundamental readiness for whatever might ultimately come next in this unfolding financial chapter. In the grand tapestry of speculative financial storytelling, expert commentary often serves as the thread that adds necessary color, perceived legitimacy, and narrative tension to the dramatic arc. Fictional economists, technical analysts, and various media personalities appear like essential characters in a serialized drama, offering nuanced perspectives that skillfully heighten the atmosphere surrounding each new development. A figure such as the imagined Dr. Hassan Al-Tamim, presented as a senior economist at a fictional Baghdad university, would articulate in this narrative that back-end rate tests are a completely normal and expected part of a financial maturation process for any nation, actively modernizing its complex financial architecture. His words, though fictional, immediately framed the rate flashes not as accidental glitches, but as potentially intentional signals of structural progressional, coded hints woven into the digital fabric of Iraq's rapidly evolving financial systems. Western analysts, like the imagined Jim George from the Global Currency Review, often amplify this interpretation by drawing contrasts between past years and the present, suggesting that in this story, 2025 represents a new era of robust interconnectivity and advanced digital readiness. Even long-standing community personalities, such as the fictionalized Frank 26, enter the narrative as thematic anchors, offering bold, often emotional interpretations that deeply resonate with the core audience who have long awaited any palpable sign of movement. These diverse voices collectively contribute to a collective crescendo where each statement, whether delivered cautiously or confidently, becomes an integrated part of the community's overall mythos. The narrative strategically uses them not to offer genuine real-world predictions, but to skillfully build dramatic tension, to symbolically signal that the critical countdown phase, symbolic though it may be, has truly begun. It is this unique blend of expert-like commentary and community enthusiasm that keeps the story dynamic, perpetually alive, and profoundly engaging for its dedicated audience. One of the richest and most detailed themes in this fictional narrative lies behind the operational scenes, where cutting-edge technology is quietly and systematically reshaping the core financial backbone of a nation preparing for a full-scale digital transformation. In this dramatized world, Iraq's central bank is often portrayed as having spent the initial portion of 2025 actively partnering with major global technology providers, names like Swift, MasterCard, and large digital systems integrators to methodically rebuild its interbank infrastructure from the ground up. This imagined, intensive effort forms the essential foundation of the Digital Dinar Transformation Program, a sweeping modernization project intended to propel the country into the next generation of real-time clearing systems and financial transparency.
The narrative suggests that during such widespread systemic upgrades, new technical protocols are rigorously tested, redundant communication pathways are synchronized, and comprehensive rate readiness simulations are executed across thousands of terminals simultaneously. In this specific fictional account, the 9:35 a.m. flash is interpreted as an audible ripple emanating from this immensely complex network, serving as a distinct sign that the new infrastructure is now fully active, completely integrated, and technically capable of distributing and managing exchange data globally in mere seconds. The story emphasizes that these new digital layers are not merely technical enhancements. They are the fundamental backbone of future financial transparency and global confidence. When currency rates eventually update in this imagined financial world, ATM, advanced mobile banking applications, teller systems, and international money transfer mechanisms would all draw their data from a unified, single, and secure data stream. Thus, the morning flash becomes far more than just a temporary number. Within the powerful narrative, it serves as a symbol of a massive system awakening, a clear technological milestone that hints at profound structural changes poised just beyond the immediately visible surface. Whether or not such events accurately mirror actual real-world processes, they undeniably provide powerful narrative momentum for the dedicated readers and viewers captivated by the compelling idea of a nation taking a decisive step into a new, fully digital financial era. Beyond the operational systems, the speculation, and the digital infrastructure, the emotional dimension is precisely where this fictional journey achieves its deepest resonance. The IQD community within this narrative is not merely portrayed as a group of investors, but rather as a global network of distinct individuals connected by a shared hope, a collective endurance, and an unwavering, long-term belief in the outcome of the story. Many of the characters in this imagined world have been portrayed as having held onto their currency notes for many years, sometimes even decades, weathering persistent skepticism from friends and family members who often dismissed the investment as unrealistic, misguided, or even a fantasy. The fictional holders are presented as having endured countless, repetitive cycles of initial excitement, subsequent disappointment, renewed optimism, and cautious, protracted waiting. With every policy announcement, every reform initiative, or every technological upgrade, whether officially confirmed or only subjectively interpreted, they found renewed meaning and justification in their steadfast commitment. Today's fictional rate flash, despite its fleeting nature and symbolic function, operates like a collective heartbeat, suddenly racing through the entire community. It powerfully fuels the imaginative hope that years of dedicated perseverance could finally be converging towards something profoundly significant and life-altering. The story consistently invites readers to reflect on their own personal resilience, constantly reminding them that persistence through periods of stagnation often becomes the defining quality that separates those who eventually fade from those who ultimately endure the full journey. The key motivational line often repeated in the narrative is, "Those who persist when nothing moves will move when everything changes," which perfectly captures the determined spirit of the fictional journey, offering a genuine sense of shared validation and purpose. In this narrative world, the long-term holders are explicitly portrayed not as passive spectators, but as the central protagonists who have earned the moral right to witness whatever comes next. Their deep-seated belief is not portrayed as naive or based on wishful thinking, but as fundamentally steadfast, the very type of enduring belief that shapes grand stories of transformation throughout both history and fiction. The real underlying message in this portion of the narrative is not focused purely on financial outcomes, but on the profound theme of human endurance, a shared collective vision, and the immense emotional strength required to patiently wait for a future that others currently lack the vision to see. Within the ongoing, unfolding narrative of this imagined currency transformation, the next phase of intense anticipation focuses heavily on a series of distinct checkpoints that enthusiasts often treat like essential stepping stones along a winding path toward ultimate transparency. The very first checkpoint in this detailed storytelling framework is the highly anticipated official statement from the Central Bank of Iraq, whose formal communication is consistently portrayed as carrying enormous symbolic and structural weight. In the narrative, enthusiasts imagine this critical statement potentially emerging at any moment between now and early December, which effectively creates a sustained, almost perpetual sense of watchfulness across the community. The second primary indicator lies in the rhythm of global forks publishing cycles. In speculative communities, certain days, such as Mondays and Wednesdays, often become ritual days, moments when external monitoring dashboards are refreshed with greater frequency and online discussions run thicker with heightened excitement and speculation. The third crucial component in this fictional tale is the visible alignment of bank-level data. Within the story, local financial institutions visibly displaying pending update messages becomes one of the most talked about signs, functioning almost like coded signals indicating that something structural and significant is actively taking place behind the scenes of the domestic banking system. Fourth is the growing idea of digital wallet synchronization, where mobile banking applications begin quietly and subtly updating internal rate tables, an imagined technical precursor in this narrative world. And last, the International Monetary Fund IMF verification release is typically portrayed as arriving swiftly, usually within $24-48 hours after any major, publicly announced policy reveal. When all five of these elements are woven together, they form a cascading sequence that fictional communities interpret as a genuine domino effect, a chain reaction in which one confirmed checkpoint instantly unlocks the next, ultimately culminating in what they confidently describe as the public confirmation of a long-awaited revaluation. Whether or not these imaginative indicators accurately mirror real-world financial processes is significantly less important in this fictional account than the profound emotional significance and narrative structure they hold for those who are closely following and invested in the story. In the rich and layered landscape of this fictional narrative, the political and economic environment within Baghdad plays a central and active role in shaping the prevailing tone of anticipation. The imagined remarks from the Prime Minister, asserting that a nation's true strength is measured not solely by its oil production, but far more by the inherent value and stability of its domestic currency, serve as a symbolic declaration of economic intent. In this specific story, his words are interpreted as being more than simple political motivation. They are seen as reflecting a broad, determined governmental commitment to national economic sovereignty, comprehensive modernization, and deeper global integration. The narrative highlights Iraq's robust anti-corruption campaigns as critically important structural reforms, consistently portraying them as proactive initiatives specifically aimed at restoring crucial public trust, cleaning up financial pipelines, and significantly strengthening institutional foundations across the board. Simultaneously, the active partnerships being forged with BRICS nations, combined with deepening alliances with major economies like China and the UAE, are framed as strategic pillars that are actively helping Iraq expand both its trade investment flows and its vital technological cooperation. Fictional analysts often note in the story that Iraq's foreign reserves have reached their highest recorded levels in more than a decade, effectively creating a tangible backdrop of economic stability that is presented as being perfectly suitable for any major economic recalibration. These blended elements merge together into a coherent storyline of national renewal, one in which Iraq is actively preparing its entire financial architecture for a bold, structural repositioning on the global economic stage. Within this fictional world, keen observers interpret every governmental reform, every diplomatic outreach, and every modernization step as a foundational building block, suggesting that the country is not reacting impulsively, but is instead moving with intentional, deliberate, and carefully measured steps toward redefining the official value of its currency. The atmosphere of Baghdad in the narrative is, therefore, consistently one of forward, determined momentum, where policy, technology, and political vision appear to be perfectly aligned toward achieving a major financial transformation. Within speculative circles, creative comparisons between Iraq's dinar and Vietnam's dong often form a compelling parallel storyline that adds global context. Although the primary spotlight of the narrative currently remains firmly on the movements of Iraq's currency, fictional analysts often enjoy exploring precisely how regional partners might respond once one country's monetary shift captures widespread global attention. In this dramatized context, Vietnam is frequently imagined as the next logical nation poised for a currency recalibration, not as a direct imitation, but as part of an interconnected, strategic trend among emerging economies. Enthusiasts within this narrative argue that in a highly competitive export environment, particularly across Asia, countries may actively seek to maintain favorable trade positions by systematically adjusting their currency structures in tandem with one another. Thus, if November in the fictional timeline represents Iraq's symbolic rise, then the month of December becomes portrayed as Vietnam's moment to step forward and adjust its own monetary policy. This speculative chain creates the illusion of a coordinated, broader regional realignment, an imagined domino sequence where one nation's fundamental reforms inspire others to proactively optimize their own financial frameworks for the global market. The overarching idea of a broader, systemic global currency reset floats through these communities like a powerful myth carried from one discussion to another, gaining immense energy not from tangible evidence but from the power of collective storytelling and shared vision. In this narrative world, the Vietnamese dong becomes a symbolic counterpart to the Iraqi dinar, representing a future stage of a much larger, global transformation that enthusiasts profoundly believe could ripple across multiple international markets. Even though this specific storyline thrives on creative interpretation rather than verifiable factual financial mechanics, it significantly enriches the broader tapestry of expectation, making the entire journey feel globally connected rather than isolated to the financial affairs of a single nation. As these fictional events continue to unfold, the narrative smoothly shifts toward a focus on guidance, gently reminding readers and viewers that clarity, emotional calmness, and unwavering patience remain the most powerful and essential tools when navigating emotionally charged and rapidly moving information. The story emphasizes that major financial transitions, whether they are real or purely imagined, often separate individuals into two distinct groups: those who react impulsively and those who maintain consistent, strategic discipline. In this dramatized world, the community is strongly encouraged to identify with the second group, carefully grounding their personal expectations not in unsubstantiated hype, but in the steady, objective observation of credible, verifiable sources of information. Within the narrative, viewers are urged to remain connected exclusively to trusted channels and to actively avoid becoming swept up in the speculative chatter that frequently emerges during periods of significantly heightened excitement and anticipation. The recent 9:35 a.m. flash becomes framed not as a trigger for immediate panic or impulsive action, but rather as a critical reminder to stay intensely attentive, consistently thoughtful, and methodically disciplined in one's approach. Motivational themes strongly underline this segment, powerfully reinforcing the guiding idea that major financial breakthroughs rarely materialize overnight, but instead are the result of materializing after long, sustained periods of consistency and profound perseverance. The closing line, "Your patience is your profit," functions as a symbolic mantra within the community's culture, serving as a constant reflection of the belief that long-term endurance ultimately shapes positive outcomes far more strongly than any sudden, ill-informed action. In closing the broadcast, the fictional narrative consistently encourages viewers to remain simultaneously hopeful yet firmly grounded, inspired yet profoundly responsible, fully ready for potential future developments yet securely anchored in stable, rational decision-making. The final, overarching message stresses that being informed is about much more than simply receiving rapid updates. It is ultimately about interpreting those updates with true wisdom, emotional balance, and a clear perspective, ensuring that the long-term commitment is maintained with integrity and steady confidence.